Today I'm doing a video on the Star Wars AT-AT 1:140 full scale model from Bandai. Unlike some of the other 1:140 full scale kits, it's of a decent size. That's the contents of the box. So I'm going to be building it up in stages. I'll include some photographs of what I'm doing, but yeah, I'm just going to do a base assembly video. Well, assembly, then, you know, weathering and generally making it look better. So I'm removing all parts trees from the plastic wrappers, so I can see what I've got. As for stand, I can leave that aside for the moment, especially considering the stands I'm actually doing anything in this case. It's literally just there as a base to look nice. We've got a sheet of, I'm not sure if those are stickers or decals. Bandai often includes both, but there looks to be just for one this time, and to be honest, there's nothing there. A couple of black lines, and not quite sure what number 3 is. But anyway. Oh, it does say water decals, so they are water slide decals, which I prefer to stickers anyway. They're so much easier to place. So, instructions as usual for Bandai. Oh, nope, they actually are annotated in English. That's not the case, usually. So, but you don't really need the annotations anyway. They've got the part numbers, they've got almost photograph style diagrams to show how everything goes together. But anyway, so I'm going to get started. So, letter is parts tree, number is number 1 for parts tree, so for this I need A and D. I'm just going to quickly organise this box so it's quick and easy to find them. This is C, B2, B1, so not quite sure why they're both labelled as B because they actually look significantly different, but anyway, that's A, this is D. So C goes in here, then D. Oh, 2 identical part trees for D, so I'm guessing the legs have got an awful lot of common components. So I'm just going to put this now nice and neatly arranged box off to the side so I can put it in, but it's not blocking up the entire camera view. Then I will just start picking parts. So now I know I need parts tree D. I'll grab that. There's 2 identical figures, 1 on each tree, so I'll pull them off. They're Stormtroopers, so, you know, I could go for a really, or, you know, try for a really precise detail thing, but they're behind a red window, so you're not going to see the detail, so all I'm going to do is give them a quick coat of white to make them look more or less right. And I'm actually going to cheat, I'm going to spray them. So I will spray them now, then come back in sort of 20 minutes. Basically doing that by painting by hand would be a nightmare. And I've got some white spray, you're not going to see anything, so, well, you're barely going to see them, you might see a faint impression of them behind the red glass, so. Paint on the Stormtroopers has dried, and looking at the instructions, there's 2 little decals to apply which contain colour intended for the Stormtroopers' faces. Now, ordinarily I would dip the decals in water and then leave them a minute to set. This time around the decals are so tiny, I'm instead going to pour water on them. and just let it drain off into his little jury-rigged tray. That seems to be movable now, so I'm going to try to apply it. Try being the operative word, because it doesn't seem to want to go. So I'm using a knife blade to peel the decal off my phone where it got attached somehow. And now I'm going to try to apply it to the kit, which has kind of worked. Honestly, you're probably not going to see this anyway, so I'm not convinced it matters if I get it on, let alone get it right. But I'm going to give it a shot before deciding not to. No, I don't think so. Unfortunately, that's just too much of a pain. So what I'm going to do instead is bring out the black highlights with a bit of panel line accent colour. So I've got a container of the black here. And I'm just going to gently apply a drop to the face of each. Then I'm going to get some absorbent paper and wipe it off, which should give us the white face we were looking for. Okay, that does seem to have brought out some of the highlights, although not that brilliantly. But end of the day, I don't think we're going to see this detail anyway, so I'm not that bothered. Okay, so next stage is to attach them to the base. Now this is a snap fit kit, you don't really need any glue, but I'm using some anyway. Okay, so there's the Stormtroopers on their seats. So now the next piece is the bottom of the head, I suppose that you could call it below a jaw. Not that the mouth opens on the air tap, but yeah, well. So this whole section slots into this bit. So yeah, the pilot seats and cockpit slots into this section. Then there's another piece which goes on the front. Have I missed something? Yes, I have. Idiot. I missed the first few instructions. So there are actually some instructions on this first page which I didn't notice. So that doesn't matter because that's just a stage which adds on there, so putting those in the wrong order matters not in the least. I'm not going to glue these because they look like they're part of a joint. I'm just making sure there's nothing that's going to get in the way, which it does not appear that there is. So this comes on like so. Yeah, that definitely feels like it's some kind of a joint. And then I need 14 and 25. I'll also take 15 off because 15 and 14 go together in the next step. So that's 14. That's 15. So again, I'm doing a quick touch test to see if there's any large bits that are likely to cause issues. There aren't. This comes here. This slots in here. And then this piece finishes off the framework. So I'm going to glue around the edges, being careful to avoid where the moving parts sit. Again, glue is not necessary, but it does help with finishing and all that. If the edges are glued together, they'll form a seal and basically they're less likely to need filling or anything to get a good finish in the end. So this is just basically a cowling to conceal the joint. In practical standpoint, it'd be to shield the joint to make it less difficult, less easy to damage. So now I've got this piece, I can stick these two together and yeah, this piece, there's a few holes here to connect it. Once again, this is not a moving part, it just links to one, so I can afford to glue it. Which again I just think helps make the model ultimately look better. If it's glued, seams shouldn't open up again when you move it, and that sort of thing. It just helps you get a better finish. Okay, so now we're starting to get the size of it, and ironically it is already bigger than the Snowspeeder and that set I made last week combined. So now there's piece A7, which looks like it's the back of the cockpit. If cockpit's the right word for a land vehicle, I'm not quite sure. Command module, whatever. It doesn't really matter what we call it. Now this piece might be visible, so what I'm going to do is, I'm not sure how much different this grey is from the grey of the base plastic, but I'm just going to apply some to try to give it a bit of depth if you can see it. That hasn't really done anything, so I'm going to add a tiniest drop of black to give that a bit more colour. Oh, that black mixing with the grey really brings it to life. Yeah, I need to mix up a slightly darker grey for this, I think. And yeah, now you can see a bit of a detail in there. So I'm going to glue this in place. Again, not really necessary. You're not going to see this at all, probably. Oh yeah. Now we've got piece C30, which is most of the rest of the head. Now there's an insert for this piece. I'm not sure whether it adds before or after, but there's a red plastic insert for the eyes, or main viewpoint, however you want to look at it. I'm going to skip ahead a bit in the instructions to see if there is anything about putting the visor, cockpit window, whatever, in. And there does not seem to be. This looks like it slots in here. Oh yes, A2, yep, it shows it here, I just missed it. So then the whole thing slides in like so, and closes up. Okay, that looks pretty good, and the red piece in there, yeah, you can't see a thing inside the cockpit, so all that work I put on detailing was wasted effort, unless you're planning on lighting it, but I'm not. The only area on this kit that will want lighting is that cockpit, and figuring out a wiring harness to allow me to do this, to switch the lights on and off without having to completely disassemble the kit to do so would be a bit of a pain. I mean, I suppose I could put in a couple of sort of CR123 batteries, but I'd realistically, to do it properly, want to run some cabling through the head, through the neck, through the body, down through the legs, out through one of the feet, out through the base, connected to a power supply, well, which would probably be just a couple of batteries. And a switch. But anyway, yeah. I'm not lighting this one. Now you notice with those I stuck them in position, then glued them. This very thin cement will penetrate down into all the gaps and stick them on like that. If you're using thicker stuff, like the stuff out of a conventional squeezy tube, you'd need to apply it first. So now we're working on the chin cannons. Now with clippers, I've noticed these parts seem to come off really well with almost nothing worth clearing up. before I've ever assembled it looked like these were designed to move, but no, there's no movement there. So I can glue them. Sorry about this, my main camera seemed to have cut out and missed the last few minutes of the assembly of the head, so hence this lower quality footage from my backup camera. Okay, so these attach to the bottom, and based on the instructions, this one which I made second goes on this side. And the first one goes on the other side. I honestly don't think it'd make much difference. They look virtually identical. But I've learned in the past it's usually worth following the instructions if they're, well, there. Okay, so the neck's got a fair bit of movement in it, which is great. And this is the completed neck. Although I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be some guns that go on the side here, but it doesn't show them yet, so they might go on at a later date. Now we're starting working on the legs. I'm not going to record all 4 legs because that'll be a bit repetitive. I should imagine all 4 will be pretty much identical. So I'll record one, then skip through and assume all 4 are pretty much the same. But of course, if you want to watch me assemble 4 legs, just repeat this section 3 times. So this looks like it's mostly sheet D, delta for the parts, which is great. Now by the looks of the other side, I need to insert 41, which is a pin, I'm guessing a friction pin, to assist with holding the legs in place. Tiny little piece which very nearly rolled off the desk. Fortunately it didn't. No glue here, because if I get it in slightly the wrong position, that'll probably mess up the leg's ability to move, and I would rather not do so. Looking at the picture, I think that's right. Yeah, it must be. That image is a bit confusing. So D42 is a tiny little bit. As small as many of the bits from the Snowspeeder, and that's it. So looks like it's supposed to come in here, if I can position it correctly, because it is a truly tiny and fiddly little piece. It was a very small barrel-shaped bit which fits in above the circle on one of the corner, well, edges of it. I think it's to limit the movement of the hinge, but I'm not entirely sure. Okay, so this hooks into here, hooks into here, and there's a joint A28 to hold it all together. Okay, so that is an upper leg. So now I build a foot, which again is going to be sheet D. So these I can glue. Now, so 44 looks like the pad of the foot, and I need 4 piece 45s to go around it in some way. And then I'll need this 43 to go on top. So these are the toes to effectively dig into the terrain, give extra traction if you're climbing hills or whatever. And then I can glue around the rim. Secure the foot pad in place, and it looks like there's supposed to be one other little bit. Oh, that'll be, yeah. That'll be the brace rod further down the list. So we've got the foot section. Now we want the lower leg, which is 27, 28 and 32. Oh, beautiful engineering. Almost a shame the ankle doesn't tilt, but still, beautiful engineering. Now I don't want to glue this piece at all because of all of that excellent engineering. I don't want to risk not being able to properly maneuver that ankle around or twist the leg. And this piece is a locking pin essentially. Okay, now there's a couple of pieces of casing. But this is a beautiful work of engineering. Now I am going to glue this. And then finally I add A30, which is the rod to support the ankle. Oh, there's finally a bit of flash to clean off. I think this is the first bit I've actually had to clean off any flash on, which is amazing. Bandai did an excellent job of engineering this kit. Okay, so now we've got the ankle moving. The knee moving, the upper leg moving, the toes move. Brilliant engineering. I'm truly impressed. Well done, Bandai. So we've now got a head and 4 pretty well articulated legs. To be fair, the neck's pretty well articulated as well. The whole kit looks to be like it'll be really posable, I suppose is the best word. So now I'm going to do the main body. So these look to be where the legs join on. And we've got these two bits. The bigger one goes at the back, smaller one up the front. Oh yeah, and keyed in such a way that it's virtually impossible to put them on wrong. Why was I surprised about that? Bandai almost always does that sort of thing, but yeah. Obviously this kit was carefully thought out. But, you know, that's not a surprise now that I'm this far in. This thing has just been amazing to put together. So, this is sort of the base chassis which everything bolts onto, but, well, perhaps bolts is the wrong word, but connects onto. So it's definitely getting there. Okay, so that's for the lower body. Now moving on to the upper body. I'll take a bit of removing. Oh wow, a little bit which I actually want to remove. Oh, side cutter's not even doing it. Oh, blade it is. Worth mentioning because it's so rare for me to actually have to remove any flash. So now I run my finger around the edge of this, and again there's a little notch here. So I'm going to just rough fit them and then run some glue along the seams. So now I've got this biggest part. And that's one of the part trees completely finished. Always a great milestone. So now this big bit slots over this other bit. And that snaps into place very satisfyingly. for grand assembly. Before I do the main assembly, I'm going to do a bit of weathering work. Okay, so I'll start with the legs and the feet of the AT-AT. Well, you know, their feet. It walks around in mud, in ice, in snow, in whatever else. So I'm going to try to do a bit of brown panel lining. Just around the feet and ankles. Well, weathering in general, not just panel lining, but the panel lines are really going to be what will bring this to life. And yeah, I know you're not going to really see the feet when it's assembled, although you might, depending on how you pose it, I suppose. But I want to do this right. So I'm applying a fair bit of this, and then, as usual, I'll just rub it off when I'm done. Mostly what I'm after doing is leaving this deposited in the cracks along the edges and all that, just to make it look like it's been weathered, it's, you know, been used. They've perhaps tried to clean it up but haven't done a perfect job. I imagine the Empire looks after their war machines, but, you know, you'd give it a rough going over when you've finished using it. You wouldn't perhaps completely polish this up every time. So you can see there looks a bit dirty, perhaps a bit rusty, but not in bad shape, certainly. So now what I want is to mix up a grey, which I'll be using for the main surface colour. Would help if I picked something with a bottom. I'm just after a mixing palette to mix up some darker grey to go all over this. Okay, so that's for grey. I'm not going to need nearly as much black. So I'll load up this much smaller brush with black. Although that's actually not working as well as I would have liked. Okay, so I've got this other bigger brush which I can use for the black, and I can use this to mix them. And we now have a much darker accent colour paint, which I'll apply liberally and then rub most of it off afterwards. So now I pick up some absorbent paper and I'm going to gently rub this down. I'm not after some of the other kits I've done, I've been trying to completely remove all paint. Here I'm leaving it a bit streaky because that's how the hat actually looked. This bottom section I'm going to leave really dirty. In fact, I'm going to go over it with black before I do the grey. In fact, when it's assembled, you'll barely see this section. So I'm not even going to bother wiping this stuff off. I'm just going to leave it as if it got completely covered and people didn't bother to clean it up. You're not going to see it anyway, so shouldn't be a problem. Now for the legs. On the legs, be a bit careful around the joints. You do not want to jam up the joints by putting too much paint on. So, rub on, wipe off. Just very gently wipe off to make it look like it's been through, well, something. Okay, so now the head, this gets the most attention. I'm going to mix up another batch of this much darker 1-to-1 black to grey, I think. So that's it, weathered up. Well, mostly there'll be some finishing to do. Okay, so I've weathered all these parts. The paint's had long enough to dry, so I need to figure out which legs are which. There should be 2 pairs. So that's 1 pair, 2 pair, and I now link them up to this. So they're just simple push fit, and they snap in nice and reassuringly. Okay, so now the head clicks in here, and the upper body and there's a couple of cannons for the sides of the head, as I guessed. That looks like all that's now left. Okay, so it looks like we've got a choice of a few different cannons. I'm not sure what the differences are. Let's have a look. Not really seeing any difference between the two different models of cannon. Except one is all-in-one, one needs assembly. Okay. So that is the AT-AT all finished. After completing the AT-AT, I think she looks amazing. Biggest problem with the kit is the toes. The joints holding them in place are rather fragile, so I've had several of them break off. They're easy enough to glue back in place, but you lose the ability to move them. Other than that, I think the kit's excellent. As you can see from those size comparisons, it's utterly dwarfs the AT-SIT and Snowspeeder. Thanks for watching. If you're still here, I'd like a bit of Feedback. This video took me an awfully long time to edit. I started with about 6 hours footage. It probably took me closer to 20 hours to edit this video together. And I work full time, it's just not practical for me to put out a video in a week or two with that amount of time spent editing. For future videos like this, I can either do a long one sort of once every month or two, or I can split it into multiple parts if I were to do, say, the Falcon or Slave one, which are probably even higher part count than this guy. So yeah, would you prefer to, for these longer videos, see me put out something more quickly with less detail, take 3 or 4 weeks to put it out, or split it into, say, 3 or 4 parts for a full assembly? But yeah, as I said, thanks for watching. Next one should be out in a week or two. Not quite sure what that is yet, but it'll be a much simpler one than this. Thanks, bye.